if we avoid money, money avoids us. Everything's that divine mirror in life. And if we're not having awareness of our financial picture, how do we know how much money we have? How can you be grateful for the amount of money you have if you have no awareness of how much you have or how much you owe, for example?
Welcome, bienvenue, bonjour to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. For women who desire to awaken their heartfelt desires, trust themselves fully, and connect with their soul's purpose through beauty. On y va. Let's go. Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. I have such a treat for you today. I was introduced to this woman, and one of the first things that was shared with me about her was she has the #1 spiritual podcast in the UK. And I was like, you know what? Let's look at this. Let's have this conversation. This woman's story is unbelievable. When she shared with me that she used to cut coupons and that's how she started online. And now she has this extraordinary community of spiritual badasses where she teaches the process of manifestation in a very beautiful way. It is without trying. It is without forcing. It is without becoming overly attached to the visions and the mantras. Not that those aren't beautiful and can be an extraordinary support system to the process, but she shares how we can also easily get caught inside of that. So I am so happy to introduce to you Emma. She's an absolutely beautiful soul. I know you're going to fall in love with her. Share with me how this podcast supports you, and let's move into 2024 in the most beautiful, relaxed, intentional, and powerful way. Enjoy.
I am so excited to share this gorgeous woman with you. The conversation that we're going to have today will obviously, this is us, right? So it'll be deep and we're going to go wherever it is that we require. I'm fascinated to really hear a little bit more about not just the idea of manifestation, but really where we have a tendency to get confused. So let me share this beautiful woman with you. And I want to share her little bit of a professional bio. And then you know me, we'll go into all the beauty of who she is above and beyond, right, the bio. So I would love to introduce you to Emma Mumford, the UK's leading voice in manifestation. Just can we pause there for a minute? The UK's leading voice. We're not talking about Idaho. We're talking about the UK. The UK's leading voice in manifestation, award-winning life coach, 3-time bestselling author, speaker, law of attraction, YouTuber, and a host of #1 spiritual podcast on iTunes, which is the Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. This is the #1 spiritual podcast in the UK. Emma, welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. Congratulations, first of all, for all you've already allowed yourself to receive in your life. I cannot wait to get into this with you. So welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tara, so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk all things manifesting, receiving. I know we're going to have an epic conversation as always.
For sure. Because I don't know do you remember do you remember the first time you watched The Secret?
Yes, of course.
Did you feel like this whole world literally opened for you?
Yeah, 100%. Because, prior to that, I had no idea what the law of attraction was or manifesting, especially here in the UK, it was such a taboo subject. No one knew what it was. It was nowhere near as spoken about as it is now. So it was just literally pure chance, pure luck that I came across it. So watching it, everyone had recommended it. Obviously, as soon as I was like, what's this law of attraction everyone's banging on about? And then people were like, watch The Secret, it's on Netflix. So I actually watched it before I read the book. And it was just this remembering. And normally, at that stage in my life, I was probably quite closed off and was like, ugh, what's this woo-woo stuff they're on about? But actually, that's the one thing that I was just hooked the whole way through. And I was like, this is how life works. And this is the best way I've heard it described. And I think it just, like you say, opened up so many doors for me of wow, okay, I get it now,
Yeah. It's so interesting that I was even called to ask you that question because you and I haven't had that conversation before. And I had a feeling it's just, I had that same remembering, like, oh my goodness, like this is, I know this, I know this. So tell us a little bit about your kind of journey into, if that was the beginning of the conversation, or what opened up inside of you where you were like, wait a minute, like this is something that I'm going to pour myself into.
Yeah. So back in 2012, I was doing a very different thing in life. I had a completely different business. I was a money saving and couponing expert here in the UK, so very different to what I do now. So that kind of, I always like compare these two like awakenings, because that awakening which led me to money saving and couponing wasn't necessarily a spiritual awakening, but it was definitely an awakening to helping people and
Mm.
to help myself get out of these, difficult situations that I found myself in. So pre the business, I was in £7,000 worth of debt thanks to a not so nice ex boyfriend. I'd taken the debt on for him because I had preferential interest rates at my banking role I was in. I was a banker. And then the relationship very quickly broke down and he never paid a single penny of it. So I was 18, 7 grand in debt and thinking, like, what the heck has happened here? So I had to leave the job at the banking because I was just full of anxiety and depression, being around money every day, being in debt myself. It was so much pressure.
Mhm.
And I just was not suited to that high intense masculine role, like at all. So I left the role after that and just went and worked part time retail, literally just to cope and feel okay and get some normality and income back. And then from that is how I discovered extreme couponing. So obviously in the US, it's a huge, huge trend and they've got a show on TLC about it. So I remember watching that and thinking like, wow, like if they can do that in America, like surely I could do that here in the UK and I would save myself so much money. I'd be able to clear this debt on a part-time income. The cogs were kind of turning of like, how can I do this? So at the time, there was nobody here in the UK talking about couponing. There was like one person and a few minimal websites that you could kind of find information about it. So I took it upon myself to learn how to do it and create, find these coupons. Very quickly, I had like the stockpile that you see all the couponers have in their spare rooms and their garages. And my friends were just like astounded by this. Like, they'd come along with a little bag, take their little goodies with them when they'd come over. And they were like, you need to share this with people, Emma. Like, people want to save money, clear debts like you. Why are you not telling people how to do this? And obviously, I was like, well, who am I to do this? I'm a 19-year-old Emma from, the UK. Who am I to share about couponing and money saving? So after a lot of pestering, I did start up a Facebook page. And within 6 months, it just, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what I expected for it because obviously I had no business experience. I had no intention to create a business. I just wanted to share this and help people. But, it's still to this day, it has over 500,000 followers. It opened up massive doors and opportunities for me, like presenting on TV and like doing kind of like regular TV slots, teaching people how to do this. So it was kind of just wild how that even came
Oh
about
my
from such, like a negative situation. Then I was just kind of propelled into this hugely successful page, which then turned into a business when I learned how to monetize it. And I ran that business for, yeah, 6 to 8 years. So it was an amazing time that I absolutely loved. But that was kind of like my first pre-awakening, I would say, to finding my purpose and, helping and serving people. So then we skipped to 2016, which is when I had the spiritual awakening. And at this point, I'm in again a not great relationship. The anxiety and depressions got really, really amplified now. I was having therapy at that time, but nothing was really giving me that kind of like, well, relief, really. It wasn't really giving me the long term kind of results. So yeah, there was a lot going on, and me and my ex split up, and that was kind of the catalyst for that spiritual awakening. And I just remember feeling like absolutely helpless. I
God.
remember feeling like there's got to be more to life than this. Like, how can people be happy? Like, how do I be happy? And I think that was kind of my, I guess, inspirational motivation of like, how can I be happy? And how can I learn to love myself like other people seem to do? Because I don't feel like I have that. And it was a really dark place in my life. And I remember just looking out of the window at like 2 a.m. in the morning and being like, God, help me. And, I hadn't used the word God in many years, and I wouldn't have called myself religious at all at that point, atheist, if anything. So it was a really profound moment where I just felt like my soul was like, oh, right, we need to get to work. Let's go, sort of thing. Like, we're done with this. And then a few days later, the word law of attraction started like popping up everywhere, seemingly, but out of nowhere. And I always find like it finds you, like you don't tend to find it, it always finds you. So it was really kind of funny how it was then popping up. And I was like, what on earth is this thing? So that's when I asked my friend, like, have you heard of this law of attraction? And she was like, yeah, you need to watch The Secret. So if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have found, the movie on Netflix and then read all the books.
This is extraordinary. I am so glad we're going here. I'm thinking of you as a young 18-year-old girl who was put in this situation, we can say, right? Your soul allowed you to move into this conversation. What is it about or is there anything that you would share about your childhood that supported you, that at 18, you were just like, I'm going to figure this out? 18, 19 years old. I have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, and the idea of them starting businesses and, it just seems so young. So what, is there anything about your childhood that you can remember, or what gave you this like conviction inside to figure things out at such a young age?
Yeah, I think there's like two parts to it, definitely, because obviously like at the time, like I think anybody at that age is like, I'm really old, I'm really mature. Like I wasn't. I was a baby. So yeah, like at school and things, I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Like, when I was going through like what I wanted to do and looking at university and stuff, I always was like, I want to be like my dad. I want to
Mhm.
run my own business. So he was self-employed for a period. So I think seeing him do it inspired me to be like, I want to do that. And, when I was young, he would help me like, he'd be like, come and help me in the business, like pack some parcels just for fun. Definitely. He wasn't making me work or anything. So, I think just being around that environment was probably something that definitely had an impact on me. But I think there was just nothing that really kind of stood out to me that I wanted to do career wise. So I knew from like watching The Apprentice and stuff with my parents that I wanted to run a business. I just had no idea what in. I was like, I don't know what I need to create. I don't know what I need to invent. Because obviously back then, YouTube was so young. There was nothing like influencers or, like the things we see today, like the businesses we run today just did not exist back then. So, it was kind of hard to envision what that business would be. And I think, I didn't really know how to do it. It seemed very impossible. And maybe the support wasn't there at school or college to really nurture that either. It was kind of just like go into the big wide world and work it out sort of thing. So yeah, I don't think when I started the couponing business, there was a desire to run a business, because obviously all I'd known was 9 to 5, all
Mhm.
I'd known was the banking career, and other part-time jobs before that. So I think it just kind of naturally happened and naturally flowed whilst I was also employed. But in terms of my childhood, obviously I've mentioned my dad's influence with that, but looking back and kind of piecing the puzzle pieces of my childhood and the trauma that I went through, obviously I've not been able to really access that fully until very, very recently. I really do see, I have an old friend of mine who used to be my acting teacher at school, and she wasn't that much older than us, but we've kind of kept in touch over the years. And she always used to say to me, Emma, you were such a determined child. Like,
Mhm.
she said, had this conviction and this determination. And she said it was just incredible to see. And obviously, I don't really know where that came from because I was so young, but I'd love to believe that it maybe was intuition. Maybe that is my soul coming through 100%. But I do think that the circumstances and the situation of what I went through as a child, like absolutely would have contributed to that from like a subconscious point of view.
Yeah. It's so, so beautiful. I want to acknowledge you, for the choices that you've made and for that continued choice to lean in, because we've all been through intense things. And it's that
Mm.
continuing to ask the questions that are sometimes so scary to ask, and say yes to what it is our souls are really deeply calling us towards. So I want to acknowledge you so much. I'm just so just inspired, by how you've risen inside of it, really, truly. So
Thank you.
18 years old, the situation with the ex-boyfriend, you leave the bank, go into retail, the whole coupon thing starts. You have this amazing Facebook page with over 500,000 followers. You start to form this business. Then we move into the spiritual awakening. You see The Secret. What happens? How is Emma getting from watching The Secret to having the number one spiritual podcast in the UK, writing all of these books, like standing in the embodiment of manifestation?
Yeah. So at the time, I had a YouTube channel, and I kind of feel like my website and my YouTube channel felt more personal, like more bloggy rather than just, coupon queen and money saving and couponing. So it kind of felt naturally that there was kind of two sides to the brand anyway that I'd created, like the Emma side and the coupon side of things. So when I discovered the law of attraction and obviously like just like couponing, fell in love with it. And I feel like I always say it was like an escapism, if anything, of like it was something positive to put my energy into, whether it was couponing or manifesting. So for me, it was something positive to put my energy into, and it was something that was going to positively impact my life and, the people around me as well. So as I was, manifesting things and, learning all these things and just thinking like, wow, like this is hugely transforming my life. Like, within 3 weeks, my mental health was
Yeah.
so different. Like for the first time I woke up in, I think it was about like 6, 7 years without an anxious belly in the morning. And for me, that was huge, huge, because every single day I'd woken up feeling anxious,
Wow.
questioning everything, having panic attacks. And within 3 weeks of doing law of attraction work, and had a panic attack for that first day, and it, continued. So for me, even just seeing that shift, I was like, this stuff works. Like for me, that was so huge because I'd done so much to try and help myself with the knowledge and awareness I had at that time of obviously, traditional counseling and therapy, that it felt amazing that something like this could help me. So I thought, well, if that's 3 weeks worth, where am I going to be in 6 months, So then I started seeing, like manifesting money and manifesting opportunities, and, healing was a big part of that journey as well. I'd obviously just gone through a breakup. So healing was a big part of that. And it was just incredible to see that from, again, a not so great situation, that something really positive could blossom from that, and I could grow and learn and evolve. So I started to kind of drop it into YouTube videos, and I would say like, I'm reading this book and I really loved it. And at the first, I thought, I'm going to lose all my subscribers here. People are going to be like, money saving, manifesting, like she's lost it. Like, no. But people knew what it was. People were like, I love this book. I love The Secret. Oh, I've heard about this. And even people who hadn't heard about it were like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, I'll check it out. So I saw very quickly that more and more people were actually really interested in this. And it kind of got to a point where I was talking about both the law of attraction and money saving. And people loved it. Like people really warmly received it. So about a year into kind of coexisting with sharing my hobbies and sharing my passion of manifesting, people said like, why aren't you doing this like more full time? Like make your YouTube channel just spirituality, just manifestation. And I knew in my heart as well that the couponing business had got so big at that point. Like I didn't know how to run it. Like it needed a whole team of people to kind of elevate it and take it to that next level and, run it as a proper business that could really support as many people as possible. So for me, I knew that I'd kind of outgrown the business. It had outgrown me. And don't get me wrong, I still love couponing. Like it will never leave me. It will never leave me. But I knew that I wanted to step into my spiritual shoes fully and, step into that path of spirituality and try this new business of like money saving and manifesting can still coexist, but it can evolve into this whole, manifesting every area of the life, not just money and finances. So it was a very scary decision to make to kind of not throw away. I sold the business, but, like sell that part of my life that was my baby. Like it'd been everything for 8 years of my life. I was hugely attached to it because it was my stability in a very unstable period of my
Mm.
life. So it was really hard to think about selling that and letting someone else run it and do whatever they wanted with it. So I did manifest the buyer for my business, and it ended up being one of my lovely friends and peers in the couponing industry. So I was very, very happy it went to someone I absolutely loved and trusted
Mm.
and knew could run it amazingly. So that felt nice that it was going to a good home, definitely. And then, yeah, 2017, I stepped into all of this full time and I started my podcast as well at that point. Again, I was like, no one listens to podcasts. Like, why do I want to do a podcast? So I was quite resistant to it. But I'm so glad I did. And I honestly, now, we're 6 years in, we're like 300 odd episodes in. Tara's obviously come on the podcast as well. And it's just so much fun. And I honestly, I'm like, thank God I just gave it a try and did it and didn't think, oh, who listens to podcasts?
This theme of you saying, okay, I'm just going to give it a try, right? I'm just going to lean in. I'm just going to see. So, oh my gosh, you just shared so much. The identity, I can imagine, was a huge piece. Since there was so much of this, the coupon and who you were inside of that, and then moving into this claiming of this new identity. I have a question that I'm really feeling into how to frame it, because I wonder, was there for you any kind of conflict or seemingly conflict around money saving and manifesting abundance? Here's what I mean, and I'm sure you already, but for our listeners so that I can articulate it clearly. I know for myself, inside of my own manifestation journey and inside of the conversation of greater wealth and abundance, I've always and still need to be really aware that I don't go into scarcity
Mm,
around saving versus creating more.
mhm.
So, how did you, inside of yourself? I mean, I know there's a way we can always come from a space of abundance and that there's more. How did that conversation unfold for you, or how would you share it with your audience around, okay, we're saving, but have it not come from that space of scarcity?
Yeah. And that's a really, really good question. And I think for me, I just like didn't even see it that way, because you have to remember I was a banker, a money saver, and then talking about manifesting abundance and wealth. So I had three very different avenues, I guess, or like routes to talk about money. But I think that what I always felt was missing from a lot of money manifestation teachings. And again, money manifesting is not my own exclusive like thing I
Yeah.
teach. I teach many things in manifesting, but because of the money background, it kind of always comes up. But for me, it was like, well, what I feel is missing is a real practical, grounded approach to manifesting money. People are like, know your worth, manifest money, feel abundant. And actually, for a lot of people, that can feel really hard to stretch to if they've been in debt, if they've grown up in poverty, for example. There's so many situations where people would think, well, that all sounds good, but I can't just feel like a millionaire. I can't just feel abundant. So for me, the money saving and budgeting and saving, whatever you want to call it, is actually a practical tool to use to be aware of money. Because the biggest thing, and I'll give you an example of this, that I found in the early days, being 7 grand in debt, was I was like, I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. I'm abundant. It's cleared. I was doing all the things that, we're told to do, and it wasn't cleared. And 6 months, 10 months passed. And I was just avoiding looking at the debt collectors, avoiding everything, trying to feel my most abundant self. And it was not going anywhere. And I was like, how can I manifest all these things in my life, yet being debt free, I can't seem to manifest? Like, what's wrong with this? I can manifest money like that. Like, it was never a huge block for me. And I literally logged on to the debt collector's website for the first time in God knows how many months. And I looked at the amount and I was like, okay, I'd been paying obviously bits off each month. I was like, okay, it's a bit more than what I thought it was, but now I know how much it means to be debt free. And I think it was like 6,800 or something like that. So I was like, right, now I know what it means to be debt free. That's what I need to manifest. 6,800 or whatever the amount was. So then I, instead of just saying debt free, was able to say a tangible amount that I needed because I had awareness. And I think when we bury our heads in the sand, we avoid. And if we avoid money, money avoids us. Everything's that divine mirror in life. And if we're not having awareness of our financial picture how do we know how much money we have? How can you be grateful for the amount of money you have if you have no awareness of how much you have or how much you owe, for example? And within 5 days of me logging on and writing that amount down, so I knew what it was, £11,000 came to me from an unexpected source. So I had the money to clear the debt, and I also had the money that I wanted to manifest to invest in my business. Both came in that amount. And I was like, oh my God, all I had to do was just look at the amount and acknowledge that's how much I needed. So I think there's a lot of avoidance when it comes to money. And I feel like that's a huge block. And the one thing that I've seen time and time again with throughout my books or like working with people is that the block is that they're trying to do all the things to be positive, but they're not actually acknowledging and having acceptance over the current situation. And even if you're not in debt, how can you be grateful for how much you have if you don't know how much you have? And I think I'm going on a tangent here, but there's another teaching that it's spoken about a lot in the manifesting sphere of, like you need to spend money to manifest money. And that in itself creates so much fear and so much scarcity, like you say, because when you go look at your bank account after that weekend of spending to feel abundant, you're going to feel anxious. You're going to think, oh God, I shouldn't have spent that. Like, please, universe, return that money. And then you're turning up with like a real weird energy to your finances and to your banking. So for me, it's about aligned spending and it's about mindful spending, so that every time you're looking at your bank account, even if that money's going down, it's in alignment because you're making those mindful purchases and spending in a way that makes you feel abundant with where you are now. So we have to meet ourselves with where we're at to really truly up level that mindset, to really truly step into wealth and abundance in whatever way that means to you. So, abundance means different things to everybody, but I think avoidance is one of the biggest things I see. And I can't stress enough, if you're avoiding your money is avoiding you.
I am so glad I asked this question. This is so, so good. And I feel like this is one of the fundamental pieces of manifestation that does often get missed and confused. Like when you're talking about if you're avoiding money, money's avoiding you, you're talking about, in my sense, this beautiful, intimate relationship, whether it's with money or love or our body or whatever it is that we're wanting to co create inside of the world. We form an intimate relationship with it. It sees us,
Mm,
we see it, and we move towards each other. We create a sensual, beautiful, intimate relationship. And just as you're saying, if you're not looking at your money, if you're avoiding it, if you're hiding from it, if you're pretending it doesn't exist, that is the energetic vibrational frequency with which you are communing with money
mm,
or with whatever that thing is. This is so good. So, so good. So, what are some of the other kind of misunderstanding or kind of holes you've seen in the manifestation conversation that you support your clients with?
mm. So another thing that just never really well, it obviously resonated with me at some point because I tried it. But one thing that always kind of felt icky to me with manifesting is that if you think bad thoughts, bad things will happen. You must be high vibe, otherwise bad things are going to happen. And obviously, that's going to make you feel a certain level of fear and a certain level of anxiety. And for someone who had anxiety and depression, like you can only imagine the thoughts that were in my head anyway. So I thought, well, okay, I can't think those thoughts anymore. So, of course, to some degree, it gave me accountability to, think better thoughts and challenge myself to do that, of course. But we're also human beings and we have a conscious and subconscious mind. And every single day we have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts, which is a heck of a lot. And I was obviously just, going around in this cycle of like, right, reframe the thought when this thought came up, like reframe it, change it to a positive. And every single time it would get worse and worse and more impactful and louder and more annoying. And I always use this example because I must have looked so funny in the supermarket. But I remember one day, like this one particular thought that was coming up, it was so intrusive. And I was walking around the supermarket doing my shopping and I was just like, I am so done with this. Like, what is going on? Like, I'm clearly broken. Like, no one else is having these thoughts. I'm trying to reframe it. I'm trying to be positive, but no matter what I do, this thought's there. And I got home just feeling so frustrated and angry. Like, why is it not working? And I just got so frustrated. I sat there and I was like, right, what is your problem? And I spoke to it. And instantly, this little voice was like, I feel scared. And I was like, oh, okay, why did you feel scared? And I had this like internal conversation with now what I know is my inner child. And it was instantly the power was dispelled. Instantly the fear went. Instantly every bit of frustration went because I honored what was coming up and I listened to it instead of fighting and resisting it. Like so many teachings kind of teach you to do of just push it down, ignore it, bypass it. And again, just like with money, if you're avoiding things, what we resist persists, right? So for me, it was just, so relieving to feel like, oh, okay, I don't have to fight this. I can talk to it, I can understand it and see what's underneath it. And then I feel better. So that was a huge epiphany for me. So, now in my own teachings, I'm like, we don't live in a world of instantaneous manifestation. Thank God, because, the universe would be chaos if that happened. So I believe that, yes, our thoughts and our words do absolutely create our reality. But I believe energy trumps all. And I believe that our consistent vibration is what manifests our reality and, things into our life. And I also, always remind people that the law of attraction is one of 7 energetic laws. We have the law of polarity and other energetic laws. And, the law of polarity teaches us that, opposites, the yin, the yang, the light, the dark, the masculine, the feminine. And, as I shared with you before, it's about you need to allow yourself to have that bad day. Like if you're feeling funky, it will move through you so much quicker if you allow it and, allow it to move through you instead of fighting and resisting it. So I think people tend to like only focus on the law of attraction and think this is the be all and end all. And, all these bad things that have happened, I've manifested. And obviously, going through extremely difficult things myself in life, I was there like, gosh, have I manifested all of this? And to some degree, of course, I can see, my beliefs, my trauma absolutely created those situations. But there's more to life than just you manifested it. There's soul contracts, there's numerous different things that are in play and some things we probably will never understand in our lifetime here. We're not meant to. So I just think sometimes it's just not as simple as you manifested it.
I so agree with you. And again, what you're sharing, it's such a level of permission for people to actually have the experience they're having. Because I agree with you, this idea that just be positive, just forget, just turn it around, just push it away. In my experience, it creates even more pressure and can make us buy into the misunderstanding that there is something wrong with us or that we're doing it wrong or that we cannot be trusted. And what I hear you saying, which I think is so profound, and I'd love everybody to really receive this in whatever way feels congruent, is to recognize that we can trust ourselves with energy. We don't need to be afraid of it. Those voices inside it, again, there's a difference like what you're sharing. It's not about spiraling and staying in a specific energy that we know isn't of service, but it's also not about being so afraid of energy and the human dynamic that we're unintentionally running from it. Like being able to sit with yourself, as you were saying, like, okay, what is this? You're afraid. Okay, like you were powerful enough in that moment and aware enough in that moment to trust yourself with the energy that was present. And would you say that's a part of manifestation as well? Like really trusting ourselves to recognize we can co create the energy. We're powerful enough with the energy. We're not subservient to it.
100%. Like I always say, you are your best guru.
Mm,
And, you are the only person who has the power to create your reality, to change your life, whatever. Like I can't give that to you. No one can give that to you. Like you have that power. And I feel like with manifesting, absolutely, it's reclaiming your power. It's stepping into your sovereignty and realizing, like, I am the creator. And I think, if we expand this into spirituality, I think there's quite a lot of disempowering things that I've experienced and, I've seen as well. And I think, the true essence of spirituality as a whole is returning us to our own innate power and truth and of unconditional love. So I always say, if someone's saying or, like sharing something that takes that power away from you or the choice, like that's not spirituality. Like
mm,
everything is returning you to your truth, to your choice. And I do deeply believe like you can never make a wrong decision. Like you need to trust yourself and trust that you are capable of this. And it's been a huge journey for me. Like, I know I've disempowered myself a lot over the years by relying on psychics or relying on like external people to, say this is going to happen for you or whatever. And, that's been a deep unlearning for me of actually, you get to choose, Emma. Like, you have the power. Stop putting the power outside of you. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can make us feel disempowered sometimes, but I think it's always remembering that, bringing it back to yourself, like, you're the only person who can make it happen. You're the only person who can save yourself. And like, that's amazing because then you have the choice to do that.
Yeah. It's amazing and scary and empowering, right? Like all at the same time. We're like, yes, it's me. Oh my God, it's me, right? Like it's this feeling of like, because sometimes I think, sometimes I'm just like, can someone just fix this for me? Like sometimes I'll joke with my husband, like, babe, just fix it, like knowingly that he can't, but that part of us that's like, we forget that we are that powerful. I saw something on your Instagram actually earlier that I loved so much. And the way that you expressed it was so beautiful and so authentic. You were saying, like, nobody can tell you you're wrong. Like, don't
Mm,
like listen to anybody telling you that you're wrong or you've done something wrong or that's the wrong way. And I loved the freedom that you opened up inside of that because so many of us are looking like, well, what is the right way? What is the right way? What is the right way? And we forget that space inside of what you just said. There is no right or wrong, really, truly. It's our own unique expression. And for us to take full ownership of that and let go of any situation or person or conversation that tells us otherwise.
mm. It's so true. And I love this quote, and I'm going to totally paraphrase and get it wrong because I can never remember the exact quote, but it's by Rumi. And it's like, outside of right doing and wrong doing, meet me in the field. It's a beautiful quote,
Love that.
and please go read it because I have not quoted it or given it justice there.
Well, we'll put it here in the show notes because it's one of my favorite as well. And it's like beyond the field of right and wrong, something like that. Like I'll meet you there or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And it gives me chills, like
Mm,
what would be available for all of us if we allowed that not only within ourselves, but within others, like let go of
mm,
that positioning that the ego says I'm safe if I'm right. I'm safe if you're wrong. Somehow that gives,
yeah.
right, the ego that false sense of power. Oh my goodness. So inside of all of this conversation for you around manifestation and spirituality, what would you say for you has been like the most powerful claiming of yourself inside of this conversation?
Mm. I would say like the biggest thing is unconditional love, I think, for me. And I'm a life path 33 in numerology. So that's literally my life path. And when I learned about this a few years ago, I was like, wow, okay, that all makes sense now. So yeah, I feel like for me, finding out things about my childhood that I didn't know until obviously in my 20s, and the journeys that I've gone through, obviously with my exes, with the businesses, with loving myself, with healing my depression, anxiety, healing trauma. I just feel like at the core essence of everything I've had to learn, like releasing perfectionism, releasing
Mm,
control, learning to surrender for the first time in my life and receive, I feel like at the core of it has been this essence of learning unconditional love for myself, obviously, and for others. And I feel like with that, the lessons and the experiences that I've gone along to really see that and learn that and embody that comes, like we were saying, that deep receiving and that deep, yeah, like unlearning of the armor that we almost put up to create control, to create perfectionism. And, I fully see it. It was a trauma response in myself, for example, like, but it took me a long while to see that. And it took me a long while to take that armor off as well. It's decades old. So I think, yeah, unconditional love is so powerful in manifesting and so powerful in our spiritual journey and development. And I feel like it can unlock so much for us, even with abundance. Like, I see the abundance that I receive now in all forms, and I'm like, wow, like it's so up leveled and so just like feels more amazing because I've been able to like do that inner work and really align with the aligned abundance that I wanted in my life.
Ah, that is so good. I mean, I don't know if I've ever really thought through that lens of the connection between that deep self love and manifestation. I mean, obviously, it's makes so much sense when we receive and when we allow ourselves to receive, we're in a space of openness, we're in a space of love. So, would you say that, I mean, keeping our hearts open consistently is a part of manifestation? Because it is so tempting when life hurts, when somebody right reflects something to us that hurts or feels challenging, or we go through grief or loss or just anything that doesn't feel in our mind's eye, obviously from a soul perspective, but from our mind's eye doesn't feel like what we want to experience. Would you say that keeping our hearts open during those times especially is a potent part of manifestation?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like it can be hard to do that in this world. And like you said, with so many things that we all go through, like, gosh, if you were like, Emma, you've got to keep your heart open all the time, like throughout the last 10 years of my life, like, of course I wasn't able to at every single point
Yeah.
because life was hard. Like I was going through things. So I think, you can only meet yourself where you're at and like gently lean into that. And I think for me, really reclaiming that as well the last few years with like the inner work and healing has been powerful because I've learned that it's safe to do that
Mhm.
and keep it open, like you say. So I think like you've got to, and it links back to what we were saying about trusting yourself. I always say, there's two pillars to trust in trusting unwaveringly in the universe, like having that unshakable trust comes down to one, trusting yourself first, and two, of course, trusting, in the universe and that you're co-creating. But if we can't trust ourselves, if we can't trust our bodies to receive, to
Mm.
hold, to, all the things. And that was a real big epiphany for me because I was manifesting, of course, previously and, in my journey. But like I said, the level and depth and the amazing flow and feelings that I have now are like
Mhm.
hugely different. And it feels so much better to my nervous system, to my body, because I know I trust myself to hold this abundance, to nurture this abundance in my life. So I know it might sound a bit kind of woo woo to say that, but absolutely, like you've got to be able to trust yourself in this process to have that external trust in the
Mhm.
universe as well.
Nothing here is too woo woo, so just know we can totally go. We can totally go there. I find that edge is so interesting to continue to increase our capacity to receive, to have all the goodness flow in and be able to say more, 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 and not kind of contract back into a space of like, okay, God, okay, universe, I'm good. I'm good. I'm grateful. You've given me so much. And that place inside of our mind that says, be grateful. Don't be selfish. Don't ask for more. You're already so good. That to me is a fascinating conversation to have inside of ourselves. Like, what else can I allow? If we really believe that it's unlimited, that we can co create anything, that we can play in these realms. Like, how do you find that for yourself when you've kind of come up against a limit of like, oh my gosh, it's so good. Can I really allow it to keep getting better? How do you play into that?
Well, I had an affirmation a while ago from Manifestation Babe, she's called, and she always repeats the affirmation, the better it gets, the better it gets. This is just the beginning. And I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
love that. So I've kind of like worked with that affirmation myself to kind of get into that mindset for sure. And I, on a level, I'm like, yes, of course that's true. So I think for me, I always look back to where I've come from. I look at being in that debt. I look at being in those unhealthy relationships. I look at all the different things, that have happened throughout my life. And I'm like, Emma, if you could come from those situations and that really difficult thing to now, anything's possible.
Mhm.
Like, you're fine. Like, you're fine. So I think for me, I use that growth and that journey to remind me of it's possible because I've lived it. I've done it. It's possible. I have the evidence there to know that I've gone from point A to point B. So for me, of course, like I think it would be normal to, think like, is there more? Like, what's going to happen from this space? But I think it comes with that deep trust of I'm always supported, I'm
Mhm.
always nurtured, the universe is always looking after me. And I think I've also got to that stage, which I think is a natural evolution in manifesting as well, where, I have manifested the big, amazing things that I've wanted to in life. So for me now, my relationship with manifesting is so different because I'm not like, I need the next big thing. What's next? What's next? What next? I'm like deeply intentional with every manifestation that does come into my
Mhm.
life and, abundance and just my journey where I am now. And in the house I'm in now, we manifested this back in May. And instantly everyone was like, what's the next big manifestation? I was like, nothing.
Mm.
Nothing. I'm going to enjoy our house. I'm going to enjoy the summer in the garden. Like, no, nothing next. There will be something. And when it feels right for that thing to come in, of course, but I'm not going to force myself to keep pushing and be on that hamster wheel of manifesting because then you're just manic
Yeah.
manifesting. And then are you really manifesting it because it's aligned and you really want it? Or are you manifesting because you think you should be
Yeah.
manifesting? So, of course, there's small goals and things I set each month, of course. But for me, the real big things that I'm working towards, it changes season to season. And I listen to the
Mm.
seasons as well of, right now we're in winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And in winter, nature is not manifesting, it's
Yeah.
resting. So for me, I really listen to the external season and I'm like, well, I feel like resting
Mm.
right now. There's not, there's a couple of goals I want to work towards, sure, but there's nothing huge that I want to manifest. So I'm going to manifest those small things and I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on what this season of my life is kind of bringing in. So yeah, I think, everyone's relationship shifts and changes, but I think it's really important to enjoy the abundance that you've manifested as well.
I love that you're bringing this forward so much because we can certainly get on this path of just the checklist. I don't know if you took the femme design assessment yet. I know you and I have had conversations about the New Yorker, the Frenchie, and the Indie. Like we can go into this faux New Yorker energy with manifesting of like, let me just check off all the things. Let me just get it, check, 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 check. This isn't to me the real intimate relationship with manifestation. This is like proving we can do something. That's the essence of the conversation, really. And what you're bringing forward with the seasonal piece, to me, rest is a part of manifestation. Like this beautiful, like incubative cradling where we allow ourselves to deepen into the inner conversation and see what's true for us. This is a part of intentionally manifesting.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people struggle to be consistent with their manifesting practices, or they struggle they're like, I haven't got the time, or I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon. But again, it's not about turning up and doing all of the things because less is more with manifesting. When we create the space, we create the space for new energy. So it's not a case of just doing everything and chucking every practice at it and hoping something works. It's being deeply intentional to find what your manifesting superpower is and doing the practices and rituals and whatever that feel good to you, that feel joyful, that
Mm.
feel expansive when they feel good to do. Because remember, you can never do anything wrong. And trusting yourself. I think a lot of times, most days I get questions of how many times should I do this? How often should I do this? And I'm like, trust yourself. Trust your intuition. Emma, what book should I read? Trust your intuition. So I think, of course, like I love people asking me questions, but I think it's like when it comes down to how many times you should do something or what you should do, of course we can, ask for advice, of course, but trust your intuition. If what I, said to one of those people didn't resonate, chuck it away. Like if it does, take it.
Complete.
So I think it's again that deep trust with yourself, which is so, so important. And again, honoring like, is that practice serving me right now? Is it not? Do I need to be doing all these different things? Because it keeps you stuck in the asking phase. If you're constantly asking for your desire every day, scripting that desire every day, writing affirmations. I mean, sometimes honestly, it's overwhelming me reading what people do. And I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. How are you not overwhelmed? So less is more. And if we keep asking, we're just getting stuck in that asking phase. We're not actually moving through the process of manifesting. So, yeah, it's definitely important to sometimes put the stuff down and, focus on the next steps, whether it's inspired action,
Mm.
whether it's letting go and surrendering, whether it's working on that trust. Because, it's not just about writing it all down and hoping for the best. We've got to meet the universe halfway with it.
Completely. And feel into the experience of what it is we're desiring, right? Which rest provides that as well. Well, Emma, thank you so, so much for all of your wisdom. Where can the Elegant Femme community find you?
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so you can find me at emmamumford.co.uk, and I'm pretty much on every social media at I am Emma Mumford, but I'm mainly on Instagram. So yeah, come on over and say
Yes,
hi.
and I know you do all these extraordinary challenges. You have beautiful meditations on your website that I was peeking at. So I would love for the Elegant Femme community to find you there. And is there anything that you want to say in closing around this conversation that now you've dedicated really your life to?
Yeah, I think like what I feel called to say is just pretty much what our whole conversation's been shaped around, like trusting yourself. And I think another parting quote that I like, it's on my manifesting rituals deck behind me, but I always like say it to myself as well. It's already yours. Like,
Mm,
remember, it's
mm,
already yours. You don't need to do
mm,
anything or become this whole different version of yourself to manifest it.
mhm.
It's already yours. It's already available to you. It's just aligning. It's just frequency.
Yeah. There's two things that you said that I'd love to repeat and leave the audience with. Less is more, and it's already yours. And I think maybe we can even call this podcast Less is More, because I think it's such a beautiful nuance to manifestation that most people don't consider as a gateway. So I love that you brought that forward. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your love, and for all the yeses that you've said to yourself around co-creating your beautiful soul-led life. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here. So excited for all the things that you're stepping into, and I wish you just a beautiful, restful holiday season. I don't know when this is going to air specifically, but regardless, you and I right now in real time, like I just sending you so much love for a beautiful, restful end of the year.
Thank you so much, Tara. You
All
too.
right, perfect. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much. Merci for listening to the Beautiful Soul Led Life podcast. I would love if this message served you, that you support it and share it with other women who might benefit from really having their lives in balance with their femme types. And if you can leave a comment, do a review. I love reading every single one of them. And I would adore if you could take a snapshot of yourself wherever you listen to this episode and post it on social media. My Instagram is elegantfemme1, and I'd love to see you, share you, and just celebrate with you as you are moving into creating, experiencing, and claiming your own beautiful soul-led life.